What's up, guys? It's time for a new tier list for the Zacian release and also for the balance patch that happened around a week ago. As always, I split my tier list into two. One is for a lane tier list for top and bot path, depending on if you pick a Pokemon there, how they perform through the entire match. And the second one is a central area tier list, because making both into one doesn't really make a lot of sense, because on Sun you might see, Pokemon a bit higher. So if you see like Cinderace in A tier, that would mean that some people might think, oh, Cinderace is actually a good laner Pokemon, or a good, you can always pick Cinderace because it's an A tier Pokemon, but that doesn't make sense. It's good, maybe good in Central, but not as good as in laning phase. And since we just talked about Cinderace, let's put it already into C tier. If you go for top or bot path Cinderace, it's just a complete no-no. And I'm also gonna not explain too much, we'll just go through it pretty fast if I can. And then we have Tyranitar next. Tyranitar is just a very strong Pokemon that can just scale into late game. He's not a good laner, but he still has much more impact overall in the game, and he can just always farm back up pretty fast, and just a bigger threat than someone like Cinderace, for example. In his laning phase, he can still at least last hit a tiny bit, and his early game is actually not really that bad. Larvitar can actually do a lot of damage when he hits one of his moves and then starts auto-taking a lot. Venusaur, I think, is a very good Pokemon right now, but for lane, it's still like, I mean, A is pretty solid. Gengar, and Gengar just is not a good lane Pokemon right now, but I would still rather have, a lane Gengar than a lane Cinderace, personally. Mr. Mime, I think, still solid A or A plus tier, I would say. I don't know which exactly. Maybe it's actually a bit further down now than it used to be. So I'm going to put it into A tier. Did lose a decent amount of value, but still absolutely great Pokemon. Snorlax as well, very solid Pokemon. It's just there's a lot of good defenders right now, but I think he deserves A tier. Gardevoir also still, even though Gardevoir got nerfed, I still think absolutely amazing Pokemon. I would still prefer it rather in Central Area right now, but you can totally pick it in laning phase and be totally fine with that as well. Again, I'm not going to order them necessarily, I'm just going to order them by role, so you can see the roles next to each other. Absol, similar to Gengar, the struggle just in general, like those two Pokemon can lane well, and they can do well out of laning phase, it's just not their meta right now. It's very difficult for those Pokemon to exist. Garchomp is for me a solid A as well. Lucario is still, I don't know, Lucario is kind of weird. I'm going to put him into, I mean, he's still easily an A tier Pokemon, right? He's just still good, but it's nothing too special right now. Crustle goes into B tier for me, even though honestly Rock Tomb is honestly not too bad. X-Scissor, Chase Smash Bit is also fine, but nothing too crazy. Greninja joins Cinderace into C tier, even though I have a very funny video coming up, but still, no, don't pick Greninja laning phase, please. Talonflame joins the Speedsters up here. I just think those Pokemon just have more potential because they at least kind of have last hitting and can just snowball early game if you just get a small lead. And those two Pokemon, if they just fall a bit behind with their non-last hitting and early game, the game can become very rough. If you have an XP share support, I feel like they can kind of work, but this tier list is not based on having, XP share support next to you, because that doesn't always happen. Charizard, absolutely terrible Pokemon right now. It does still work in Central Area a tiny bit, but it doesn't work in lane whatsoever. Zara, not a big fan of. It's one of the speedsters that I actually just don't want to see in my games. But yeah, I still think I'd rather have this than this in my game. Eldegoss still easily A plus tier, even though it got nerfed a tiny bit. This Pokemon, or like supports in general, are super strong right now. Cramorant is a solid A for me. Very underrated Pokemon, very strong. Blastoise, A plus, I would say. This Pokemon is crazy strong when it comes to team fighting and in general. Of course, sometimes laning phase can struggle a tiny bit, but with Water Gun, he has good secure. The only thing is, like, you always see a lot of Wartortles in your games, right? Wartortle is like one of the most played Pokemon apparently, because your Blastoise just never evolve. That can happen quite a lot. Pikachu, nothing crazy, goes into A plus, B plus for me. Clefable, A plus, Gravity, and Moonlight are crazy right now, and this Pokemon is so annoying to deal with. I think, and supports are super strong. Ninetales, similar to Pikachu, it is fine, but just about average. Wigglytuff, I think, is also just very average right now. It can work though, and is for sure not a bad Pokemon. Slowbro, I think I'm going to put Slowbro into S tier. This Pokemon is insane. I don't know what it is about this Pokemon, but I feel like you also kind of have to pick it now to even win against Zacian. Like, it's just the Pokemon that shuts down all these OP Pokemon as well. It's a great counter to it. So I'm going to put it into S tier. Machamp is what I think the best all-rounder for me personally right now, if I want to go for an all-rounder. I mean, besides Zacian and Urshifu, of course, sorry. Besides those are obviously on a different level. Very good Pokemon. Blissey, also another support, joining the A plus tier. Very good Pokemon. Mamoswine, I think, is a solid A next to Snorlax. Then we have Sylveon, which I think is one of the better attacker still you can pick. Mystic Fire, Hyper Voice, very good. Of a pick. Decidueye joins the C tier. Every time I have a Decidueye in my team in laning phase, it just feels so miserable to play with. I can't explain it, but it's just so bad. Greedent is still solid A as well. Just a decent Pokemon. Dragonite in laning phase is absolutely hideous. Whenever it's similar to these two Pokemon. Like whenever I see these Pokemon in my team going to top or bot path, already kinda, I'm not saying I feel tilted, but I already feel quite annoyed seeing those. Serena has fallen off a lot. I really just don't like Serena right now. Gonna put into B+ tier. I just don't think it really does all too much, and I really haven't seen Serena much played at all. Like this Pokemon has just fallen off, and it's very difficult to play because there's so many unstoppable effects as well in the meta, and it feels very difficult to play, but Serena still works as well. B+ doesn't mean those Pokemon are unplayable. They still work. They're not as good as other Pokemon right now. Trevenant goes into A+ tier for me now. I think Woodhammer's crazy. Maybe I'm overestimating it, but every time I play against Woodhammer, it feels so incredibly strong. It just feels so strong, Woodhammer. It really does. So I'm going to put it into A+ tier for me. Aegislash, I think, is similar to Serena right now. I do think it's a good Pokemon, but it's nothing too crazy either. It's just very average. But it does work as well. Like, again, B+ doesn't mean those Pokemon don't work. B+ is still solid as well. I think B and C is where it becomes critical. Hoopa, amazing Pokemon, easily A+ to me. I don't think I want to put it into S tier though. Duraludon is like that one attacker that is a bit better than the rest in laning phase, but still nothing too crazy either, I have to say, either between like B or B+, but I think in the end I still rather have the other attackers in there. And right now there's this one attacker that has been risen up, which is Espeon. Espeon is probably the second best lane attacker now. After the latest patches, even in tournaments, we saw it in almost every single game right now. Espeon is crazy, crazy strong after those buffs. And the one attacker that's just better is Mew. Mew is still easily S tier for me. This Pokemon is just so strong. Slick Spoon as well makes it even stronger right now. Gives it even more last-hitting early game as well on an already very strong last-hitting Pokemon. Azumarill, I feel like those three were like the most popular around us right now, and they all have fallen off. Because of nerfs, of course. All of them received some nerfs in the past, and then, yeah, some others got buffs and have taken over a tiny bit. You can see there's a lot of good defenders and supports right now as well that kind of just rival these Pokemon. Then we have Delphox. Delphox is an okay lane Pokemon, but it's nothing too crazy. I think thanks to the Spoon, it can also last it a decent amount. But yeah, it's nothing too crazy. Glaceon, honestly, Glaceon is just such a strong Pokemon because it's very easy to play. It is very easy, but I don't want to put it too high. I'm going to put it into B+, but I think Icicle Spear can be a very good laning Pokemon, and it's for sure something you can also consider playing. Buzzole, I love Buzzole, but he still struggles, but he's still a very good Pokemon. He just requires the right teams, and I still, I think B+ tier is totally fair for him. Scyther, I think Scyther has fallen off in laning phase as well a tiny bit. The nerfs did hit him a decent amount, and I don't think it is too incredible right now. It's still a good Pokemon, but I do think you don't have to necessarily pick it, be like, yeah, I have to pick it every single time now. I had Dodrio last week in S tier, but the meta is becoming more and more difficult for Dodrio, especially with like this Woodhammer, Trevenant as well being around. Like, it just hits you every single time. I do think it's the best speedster if you want to lane with, so I'm going to put it into A tier. I think that's totally fair. Scizor just doesn't feel good right now. I really just don't know what it is, but Scizor, I don't know. Scizor is not very good, but I think it's not griefing picking it either. Like, I think a B+ tier is totally fair for this Pokemon too. Then we have Sableye, which is still very annoying. I'm going to put it into A tier. It could be even A+, potentially, but I think A is totally fine. Zoroark is a great lane Pokemon, and I want to put it into A tier for now. A Feint Attack can snowball lanes very hard. The only problem is it's very difficult to play. It has difficult late game as well, and that's why the win rate is kind of low. But you can snowball games very hard with it, and it's one of my favorite Pokemon currently to play. Then we have Water Build Urshifu, which in laning phase is not too amazing, I have to say. I think it just joins the other arounders right here. They just kind of have like a weird, they're kind of in a weird spot, I feel like. Because I feel like defenders just do a bit more sometimes, and these tanky attackers as well. I'm going to put him to this. Then we have Dark Urshifu, which I'm going to put into this tier, because it's just a bit safer, and it says that last hitting tool that just makes it much, much better. Actually, I think I'm going to still put Dark Urshifu into A+ tier. Yeah, it's still very, very good. Dragapult joins the other attackers down here. Comfey now is an interesting choice. I think Comfey is either between S or A+ tier. I'm going to put it into A+ tier, but it can easily be S tier because it makes other Pokemon, like Zacian, insanely overpowered. Comfey Zacian is such a dumb combo, and Comfey just makes all these Pokemon up here as well. Someone like Urshifu or Dodrio or Slowbro, just so unkillable, and it's so ridiculous how strong this Pokemon becomes with those. But I still don't know if I want to put it into S tier because it's not always a good Pokemon necessarily, but I think it's a very solid. I mean, you can see how the supports are very, very good And then Zacian, of course, into S tier. This Pokemon is incredible right now. It doesn't matter where you play it. It is not as S+++ as it was, but thanks to Comfy, like if Comfy makes it instantly S++++ tier, so Zacian Comfy is so hard to deal with. And that's it for the lane tier list. I think it looks quite fine. I think the B+ tier could be a bit different, I have to say, but overall, I think this is looking quite fine. Again, always let me know in the comments what you think about each tier list. Gonna leave it up for the screen in 5 seconds, scout around if there's anything I still want to change, but I think this looks quite fine to me from my understanding of the meta tiny bit. Of course, certain things as always could be a bit higher, some could be a bit lower, like Mamoswine. I don't know if he's still in A tier after all these other defenders are like near on the same level, or stuff like Zoroark might be too high, stuff like Serena, Azumarill, Aegislash might be a bit too low, but honestly, yeah, everything has their place, and the meta is kind of weird right now. Again, all-rounders dominate kind of the game still, yes and no at the same time, but yeah, that's it for the lane tier list. Now we head over to the Sentry area tier list, where I think I'm only gonna have maybe one S tier Pokemon right now, because it just outshines all the other ones. I guess you can already guess which one is going to be. First, we're gonna start with Venusaur, which I think is a good jungle Pokemon thanks to Comfy as well. I do think it's very underrated, and I think it should be probably played a bit more, depending on the scenarios. I'm gonna give it a. Actually, I'm gonna put it into A+ tier. I think Venusaur is very strong when it comes to jungling, and yeah, Gengar. The Speedsters are struggling right now, even though the Spoon also feels pretty decent on the Pokemon. It's nothing game-changing. Gengar still is just, yeah, there. It's just the meta can be so tanky right now that all these Speedsters can struggle getting those KOs. And for that same reason, I'm also putting up Soul right here. I think Talon is a tiny bit better, just because he is a bit more versatile when it comes to all these things. But in the end, it's still kind of just a B+ tier. So Aura, I always rate a tiny bit lower than the other Speedsters. Might be because I just don't like the Pokemon too much, but I don't think it's too amazing. And Zoroark is better in laning phase because, like, he can jungle, but the reason why he's better in laning phase is because then you leave your jungle spot open to a Pokemon that just has better late game. And I think that's what's very important right now. Just having like the Tyranitar or Venusaur or Gardevoir jungling and scaling up very much, or like a Delphox, right, scaling up in jungle, and then have Zoroark just in lane doing his own thing. That's why I don't like those Pokemon right now in laning phase either, because they just don't have good late game. And late game is just very important right now in the game with all that supporting and defending going on. You need that carry in late game that can actually win your team fights, which happens a lot. I feel like team comps in Unite have gotten better lately, and people are picking much better team comps, which just makes these, very strong. Gardevoir, even though after the nerfs, I still think Gardevoir is absolutely amazing. Gonna put it into A+ tier. It did deserve a few nerfs, but yeah. Gonna put it into there. Same for Tyranitar. Tyranitar still is absolutely amazing. One of the best late game Pokemon, also with Comfy, works very well. Next up is Cinderace. I think Cinderace is like very hit or miss Pokemon. It needs a team around it, and if you don't have a team built around it, it just kind of struggles. And it's the same for Greninja. I think Greninja is similar to these Pokemon, where they don't have enough damage to get their resets in, and they don't have enough damage to actually make the game deciding plays sometimes. Greninja can work very well, but there's also certain team comps, and especially something like Gravity is so hard to play into. As soon as you play into Clefable, you play into like a Tyranitar Comfy, it's very hard for you to play the game, and I don't like these AD carries or, auto take damage Pokemon too much right now. Charizard goes into B tier, I don't know, just doesn't really hit it for me right now. I probably should try out some Charizard again, maybe I'm going to change my opinion on it, but for now, I just don't see it being too powerful. Blastoise, I think, is a great jungle Pokemon, personally. It allows him to get very high levels and just be absolutely unkillable, but also dealing a crazy amount of damage, so it goes into A tier for me. Decidueye is like a good Pokemon if there was drafting in solo queue, but since we don't have drafting in solo queue, it feels very difficult to play. It does work, but again, similar to the other Pokemon, it just kind of needs more of a team around it for it to work very well. Next up, we have Cramorant, which I think just is a solid Pokemon. I posted a video earlier as well today if you want to watch some Dive Air / Cramorant gameplay in jungle with this, the new hate item. It is actually quite nice. Ninetales, I mean, Ninetales is like a meme jungle Pokemon, but it's not even that bad either. Like, it's a very fun jungle Pokemon. It's nothing crazy, but it does work a good amount. Machamp is alright in jungle. I just rather have him in lane, but you can totally go Machamp jungle and perform very well on it as well. Azumarill just has fallen off. Same for the jungle position. Azumarill just has fallen off a tiny bit compared to other Pokemon. Next up, we have Garchomp, which I think is just a solid Pokemon, depending on, like, he's one of those Pokemon that can actually kill tankier team comps, right? Because of his passive. and because he does a lot of damage to high HP targets, which just allows him to actually shred through enemies quite better. Lucario, I would not recommend playing Lucario jungle whatsoever. Pikachu jungle, yeah, it's a meme. I wouldn't recommend playing Pikachu jungle. It is for sure more of a meme. Sylveon is actually quite fine. I think Mystic Fire can be very good as a jungle Pokemon, especially with the Spoon as well. Also got a video about this coming out tomorrow, where Mystic Fire with the Spoon allows Sylveon to be a very good early game jungle Pokemon, and also still keep up with the others by just farming white Pokemon much faster now. Dragonite is just alright, nothing crazy right now, but I do think he's still okay. Hyper Beam is just always a good move. It will always be a decent move as well. Duraludon is just alright. He's just like the average basic attack Pokemon. And again, he's also very good at killing higher HP targets, similar to like Cinderace, but I do think he's a bit more safer than a Cinderace. Has a bit more, I mean, they have around the same mobility, right? Dragon Tail compared to Blaze Kick and Flame Charge have the same mobility, but I do think it's a bit harder to actually take down a Duraludon than it is to take down a Cinderace. Next up, we have Espeon, which can also totally jungle. I do think you can play it everywhere, but do we really want to have Espeon in jungle when it's so good in lane? That is the question, and yeah, I don't know. I don't think we do, so I'm going to put it to B+ here, but it can totally jungle. It is an attacker that can go into the jungle position. Scizor, I hate whenever someone locks in Scizor jungle. I already know the game is going to be insanely difficult, because he just takes years to clear the jungle as well to begin with. He has no kill pressure when ganking, and it's just, the Pokemon in general is not too amazing anyways right now. Delphox is then easy A+ to me, just because of its low Unite move. Cooldown still makes an absolutely insane jungle Pokemon that has insane late game. You can have also multiple bits, so you can still go Flame Charge, Mystic Fire, which is still very good. Thanks to the Spoon as well. You can also go Flame Charge with Fire Blast for more burst damage, which is also very good. Glaceon, easy A+ tier as well for me. Icy Wind, Icy Speed, doesn't matter which one you go. You will do a lot, but Icy Wind is still very overpowered. Dragapult, I mean, Dragapult apparently is bugged right now as well. I heard that Dragon Dance doesn't properly reset, so I'm just going to put it down into B tier until then, because apparently they changed it where Dragon Dance now has to really get a takedown or something. I haven't played him yet, but I've heard people say and tell me that this Pokemon is bugged and the Dragon Dance resets don't properly work. Mew also goes into A+ for jungling, just because of its strong early game, strong late game. And it also has very good jungle clear early on. And thanks to the Spoon. The Spoon is just making all these Pokemon also clear the jungle just much faster. Next up, we have Serena, which is alright, I would say, in jungle position, just because it gets to level 6 much faster compared to other Pokemon, and then can kind of take over. Dodrio is still amazing as a jungle Pokemon as well. Gonna put it into A+ tier. It's probably the best speedster you can pick when it comes to jungling. Buzzole can jungle, but again, it doesn't have late game, similar to someone like Zoroark. It just doesn't have late game. And if your jungle Pokemon doesn't have too good late game, it's still much harder to actually close out the games, right? Dark Urshifu, still A+ tier as well. I just can't, I feel like I have to put Zacian in here, and I can't put anything next to Zacian, because I think there's nothing in the game that just beats Zacian when it comes to Central Area right now. That's why I can't put, otherwise I would put this into S+ into S tier, maybe Mew into S tier, maybe Icicle or Icy Wind Glaceon into S tier, but I can't. I feel like maybe there should be an S+ tier, where I put Zacian in, and just make another one, but for now I think Zacian is just a bit ahead of everyone else. Him with Comfy is just not fair as well, and this Pokemon is still absolutely strong. It's not fixed, the bugs got fixed, but it still needs a few nerfs for it to be actually, a fair Pokemon. Dark Urshifu, I think, is fine. I don't know, Water Bear Urshifu is fine, but it still just has a hard time closing out games. Gonna put it into A tier. Aegislash, it's alright, I'm gonna put it next to Azumarill. I think they're pretty close when it comes to things, but I still rather think Aegislash is a tiny bit better. Scyther has fallen off, but I do think he's still a decent jungle Pokemon. I'm gonna put it into A tier. And I think that should be it, unless I'm missing something. I mean, Trevenant in theory can... I mean, these Pokemon in theory can jungle some of them, these defenders, but do we really want to put them into jungle position? No, we don't. So, S tier, Zacian, A+, you have Mew, Venu, Glaceon, Gardevoir, Delphox, Tyranitar, Dark Bear, or Dark Build, Urshifu, and Dodrio. Blastoise, Krem, Sylveon, Duraludon, Garchomp, Scyther, and the other one in A. I think this looks quite fine. Depending on which jungler you have, it can always just be higher or lower as well. Again, B+ doesn't mean those Pokemon are unviable. They totally can be playable, but other Pokemon probably have a higher chance of winning the game, especially when it comes to, late game, because all these Pokemon have good late game. Mew, Venu, Glaceon, Gardevoir, Delphox, amazing late game Pokemon. Tyranitar, amazing late game Pokemon. Surging, Wick Blow. Urshifu just has that last hitting tool for Rayquaza and all the objectives. Dodrio as well, just an amazing Pokemon across the entire game. Can also be quite difficult though, especially because of Gravity, Clefable, and there being a lot of stunts in the game. But doesn't matter what. Yeah, this is my Sentry tier list. And again, let me know in the comments what you think about this. Hope you guys enjoyed this tier list. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!